Income and expenses. In general, a budget's made up of two important parts: income and expenses. Income is money that you make, so that might be your regular income, your part-time or regular work, depending on if you only work in the summer or only work on weekends. It could be something like an allowance that you get or gifts that you receive. Either way, that's all money that you're getting from somewhere and that you can choose to spend. Expenses is money that you spend, and this can cover everything. Things like that are essential to your life, like housing, food, transport, education. But it can also be those wants in your life that are things like entertainment, your Netflix subscription, your sports leagues and your sports equipment. Those are all expenses that you have to account for. Both income and expenses can be fixed. So fixed income or expenses, that's something that should be the same every single month. Or they can be variable. And variable income or expenses are things that change from one month to the next, and you can't really totally predict what they're going to be like. So for example, a fixed income would be a salary for full-time or part-time work. As long as that part-time job, you have regular scheduled guaranteed hours, like you always work 25 hours a week, then your income's fixed. Fixed expenses are things that shouldn't change month to month, so that might be like your phone bill. Your phone bill should be the same month to month. Every now and then you'll have a bad month and maybe you go over your data limit and that changes things, but for the most part your phone bill should be fixed. A variable income, for example, would be tips you get while working at a restaurant. That can really change from day to day, but also month to month. Because during the summer, if you work downtown during peak tourism season, you might be making a lot of extra money in tips. But during cold winter days, maybe the business is a lot slower and you will all of a sudden see much fewer tips come in. And a common variable expense would be dining out. Because how often you go can often change from week to week, and the quality of places you go to can vary from going to some place that's relatively cheap, like a fast food place, to going somewhere very nice for dinner. What's the difference between a variable expense and an unexpected cost? A variable expense is something that you expect to spend, but that the exact amount is hard to predict. So, for example, that might be your gasoline bill for your car, which some people, you drive to work, that's pretty regular, but you can go, some weeks you do a lot more driving after work or on the weekends, you go on a road trip. That makes your week to week or month to month gas bill can actually be quite different from one month to another. Or maybe during nice months you walk to work, that means you're driving less and you're using less gas, etc. But you still expect to pay for gas. An unexpected cost really can't be planned for. So an example is your car battery dying without warning. You can't plan for that. Maybe, on your last oil inspection they said, hey, your battery's getting weak, you should get this checked out. But one day your battery dies, you have to replace it. That's not something that you generally expect to have spent. Whereas gasoline, you did at some point expect, even though it's hard to predict how much it's going to be, you expect to have to pay for it. So in each of these examples, what we're going to do is see if this is an example of fixed or variable expense or income. So is it fixed expense or variable expense, or fixed income or variable income? Jordan's cell phone is $65 per month. Because it's $65 every month, this is clearly fixed. And this is money that Jordan has to spend, so it's an expense. This is a fixed expense. Ben goes to the mall to pick up a new pair of Vans skate shoes. So to start with, this is definitely, again, an expense because Ben is buying shoes. But is it fixed or variable? This is what I would call a variable expense because you're not buying shoes month after month regularly. Sometimes you might need to buy a new pair of shoes every 6 months or every year, but it's not something that you expect to spend on a very regular interval. Example C, Vicky gets 16 hours of work per week as a server at White Spot. She makes $12 per hour plus tips. What's actually really cool about this is that it's a good example of how you can have part of your income be fixed and part be variable. So this $12 per hour, this is an example of a fixed income. Because she always gets 16 hours per week and she gets paid $12 per hour, she knows how much she's going to make for that work. Then there's this plus tips part. This is an example of a variable income, just like we talked about on the last slide. So working as a server has an element that's fixed income and then an element that's variable income.